You guys have found your way to Demystifying the Navigator in this Kronos Learning Live session. And today we're going to talk to you all about navigating the Navigator, really. How to make your way around the Navigator. Maybe you're brand new to Kronos and you've never seen the Navigator interface. Or maybe you're a long-time Kronos client and you've been using the classic version, so you're new to the Navigator interface. In either case, you're at the right spot to learn a little bit more about Navigator from a high level. We're going to take the next hour, and I'm going to walk you through just some high-level navigation, just kind of breaking down the components of the screen, letting you know where to find stuff, how to move stuff around, and really just how to use that Navigator interface. My name is Chris Dunn, and I'm a user adoption consultant here at Kronos. So I do a little bit of everything with custom clients. Sometimes I'm delivering training. Sometimes I'm developing training for a client. Sometimes just consulting with a client on the best way to design, develop, and deploy their training. And I've been around this timekeeping application for quite a long time, about 12 or so years now, back to version 5. So seen a lot of changes, and the Navigator view is pretty cool, really. Really helps the manager really get to what they need to quickly and navigate all the great information in Workforce Timekeeper in a more organized fashion and a little more easily. There's a ton of great information and a ton of great things you can do in Timekeeper, but it's all about how to get to them and how to efficiently and quickly use that information. So I'll be your presenter for the next hour. You guys can ask questions at any point. You'll see in your little webinar session there's an option to type me a question. I'll answer all questions. I just can't guarantee when I'll do it. It just depends on the question. If it's something somebody asks that's quick and makes sense to answer, to stop and answer right then and there, I'll do that. If it's a more general question or something that might take me a little more time, I might go ahead and save that for towards the end of the presentation. Of course, you guys can hear me. I can't hear you. But like I said, I'll be more than happy to answer questions. We did this session yesterday and had a few great questions from the audience. So as questions come to mind, just type them out. I just don't want you to think I forgot about you. If you ask a question and a few minutes has gone by and you think, Chris, why aren't you answering my question? I just might be saving it till the end. So I just don't want you guys to think I forgot about you. So sit back and relax, and hopefully you're going to learn a few things today about Navigator as we make our way through. I really have 4 objectives that I hope to accomplish today with everyone on the call. And that's first to identify the key areas of the Navigator itself. Everybody that uses the Navigator view of Workforce Timekeeper has a Navigator assigned to them. And in each Navigator, there's different components, key areas, if you will, of that Navigator. We're going to start off talking about that. Second objective is to talk about managing workspaces using the carousel. So in Navigator, I'm going to show you something called the Workspace carousel up in the top right-hand corner of the screen. And if you have more than one workspace, which most people do, that tool is how you toggle from workspace to workspace. So we're going to talk about that. The next thing, we're going to talk about accessing widgets from the Related Items pane, a little tool that's part of the Navigator called the Related Items pane that stores some of the widgets that are not displayed on the screen. And lastly, I'm going to demonstrate how alerts and wizards are used to perform some key business processes and tasks. So those are the 4 goals, 4 objectives we want to accomplish today. Just to let you know what to expect, I'm going to start off by a PowerPoint. Just like when we teach this section as part of a class, I like to use the PowerPoint first just to kind of lay out the screen for you, kind of give you a little lay of the land and kind of walk you through and explain what some of the components are. At that point, I am going to switch away from the PowerPoint, and I'm going to go into a virtual machine that I'm connected to so you can see real time. Because some of the things like moving items around, using the Workspace carousel, responding to alerts, that kind of stuff just makes more sense to see it real time. So I want you to see the, see the application, see things moving around so you can get a good understanding. So Don't panic. If you have any questions when I'm going through just the PowerPoint part, I will be reinforcing everything I cover in the PowerPoint in the virtual machine live as well. So key areas of the Navigator. Like I said, everybody who uses the Navigator view of Workforce Timekeeper is assigned a particular navigator. Inside those navigators are some key things. There's alerts, there's a workspace carousel, there is the actual workspace tab, which is the workspace itself, and the related items pane. So we're going to kind of take a tour around this screenshot. I'm going to explain these to you in some depth. You'll see there's a note on the PowerPoint, and this is definitely worth bringing up at this point. I try to do this frequently throughout the presentation. The great part about Navigator is that it's highly customizable, very, very customizable. So you can make Navigator your own, your company, when I say you, not individually necessarily, but as a company, you can decide what you are and aren't going to use and what it's going to be called, what it's going to look like. The reason why I say all this is because what you're going to see today is what we have configured for a sample training environment. So you may or may not see things exactly the way I see them. I'm going to show you this as an example, but keep in mind, alerts are a perfect example. Alerts are optional. Your company may or may not use alerts. I'm going to talk to you about alerts, explain to them, show you how to use them. But if you get back to your desk and you don't have alerts, don't panic. That's totally fine. Your company might have made the decision to not use alerts. So just keep that in mind as we go through that your company can configure this how they want it, so you might not see exactly what I see. But the good news is all these things are still relevant. You'll always have related items. You'll always have a carousel. You'll always have a workspace. You'll move the widgets around in the same manner. So the things I'm going to tell you today and show you today, they'll be applicable, so don't be scared by thinking your configuration might be so different. There's just some items that may not show, so you might learn more than you need to learn today because you might not be using all these features. So let's start looking at this screenshot here of the Navigator. And once you log in, I've already logged into my machine. So at this point, it's showing me myself logged in as Christy Fryman. So I've already got to the login screen. I already entered my username. I entered my password, and I either hit enter or I clicked my little log on button, and then up comes this Navigator screen. So as you can see here, it says, welcome Christy Fryman at the top. I know it might be a little hard to read. I'll show you again in the application, but behind these red arrows where I'm moving my mouse, it says, welcome Christy Fryman. So the application is telling me who I'm logged in as. Underneath that is the sign out. When you're done and ready to sign out, click on the sign out. It will log you off Navigator. As a best practice, we always tell our customers that when you're not actively using the timekeeping system, you should sign out by clicking that sign out. The reason is if I'm working, doing stuff on my department's, my employees' time cards, I'm there working at my desk, I get up to get a drink or somebody calls me away for something. If I do not click sign out, then somebody can come in behind me, sit down at my desk, and do things in the timekeeping application under my login. So we always want to make sure we sign out. In my example, I'm showing the Kronos login on the top left-hand side of the screen. Your company's logo could be on there if you guys chose to customize it. So yours might show your company name, or mine says Kronos. Moving across the screen to the right is the alerts. Alerts are circled here in this red oval. Alerts are one of the things that I mentioned to you guys are optional. So your company may or may not use alerts. If you do use alerts, you can also have between 1 and 3 configured. In this screenshot you're seeing, there's 2. Notice the oval goes around 2 different exceptions. When I log into the virtual machine here in a few minutes, you're going to see it has 3 configured. So there's 2 different levels with alerts, right? First, do I have them or not? Because they are optional. Then if you do use alerts, you can use between 1 and 3 per Navigator. So I can have one, I can have two, like in this case, or I can have all three configured, but there's up to a maximum of three. And alerts serve a purpose. Their purpose is to put directly in front of the manager those key things that you think need to be addressed on a regular basis by that manager. The little format, I always tell everybody, kind of reminds me of Facebook, right? You log on to Facebook, and you see your notifications, your alerts, your requests, and it shows you right away, you know, if you have anything pending, and the number represents, you know, how many of those items you have. Same thing here. So in the first case here with the little time clock and the number 4, it's telling me as Christy Fryman when I log in that I have 4 exceptions, 4 time card exceptions that need my attention. So maybe it's a late in, late out, a missed punch, unexcused absence, whatever the exception may be. That alert is telling me I have 4 exceptions that need my attention. So you kind of get the idea. I'm going to show you when we're in the virtual machine how to go to the issues from there to resolve them, but that's conceptually what the alert is used for. You can configure it for time off requests, for different request manager requests, overtime, time card exceptions, again, whatever's important to you and your organization and what you want that manager to see, that is what they'll see in the alerts. The idea, again, to keep it simple and put right in front of the timekeeping manager those things that need their attention. So they log in, they look up there to alerts, they see what needs their attention. Moving over from alerts to the right is the Workspace carousel. The carousel there houses other workspaces if you have more than one. And like I mentioned earlier, most users will have more than one workspace. When I log into the live system here, the virtual machine, as Christy Fryman, you're going to see she has 3. So most people have more than one workspace, but only one workspace can display as your home workspace. All the other workspaces, if you have more than one, are going to be stored up here in the Workspaces carousel. I'm going to show you real time how to use this, but you basically just click the little down arrow at Workspaces carousel. That'll open it up and allow you to toggle through the different workspaces you have access to. While we're talking about workspaces, I mentioned that each user has one home workspace that is configured with their Navigator. So when you log in, one workspace automatically opens in your Navigator. In this case of Christy Fryman, her home workspace is the Manage My Department workspace. We know it's her home workspace up here. It's the white tab. If you guys look where I'm moving my mouse, it says Manage My Department. See the little house by it? That tells me this is the home workspace. I know this is also what's active on the screen because it's white instead of blue. So the Manage My Department workspace is Christy Fryman's home workspace. Her other 2 workspaces we're going to find up here in the Workspaces carousel, and we're going to access them by clicking that down arrow. And again, I'm going to show you that as we move to the virtual machine. Moving down to the workspace we just talked about, so I said every user logs on to Navigator and has a home workspace, in this case Manage My Department for Christy Fryman. Under that workspace is widgets that are showing on the screen, and widgets that we can't see that are stored in the related items. This is the workspace right here. In this example, and this is another example of how things are customizable, in my PowerPoint I am showing you a 3-column layout, When I go into my virtual machine, it will be a single widget layout. So in this example, I said it's 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. You can see in the center, this is the active or primary widget. So this is the widget I can use. The other widgets are on the screen are in this first column. There's 2 showing here and 2 showing here. So in this screenshot, I have 5 widgets that I can see. 1 is the primary, and the others are in related items. When I log on to the virtual machine, there's only going to be 1 widget visible because it's a single widget configuration, and that one is in the active position as the primary widget, and all the others are in related items. Now I'm going to show you how to move these widgets around the screen when we log into the virtual machine here shortly. But just know that the active widget is the only one you can work on. If I wanted to use any of these other widgets, I'd have to bring them into the active position. At this point, I'd like to stop briefly and talk to you about what a widget is. So for those of you that have been using Kronos for years, maybe in the classic view, the widget is kind of like, you know, that whole Genie quick link idea. It's a window into a particular part of the application. If you're a new Kronos user and those other terms don't make sense, that's fine too. A widget is a window into that particular piece of the application. So what do I mean by that? What's a window into the application? We configure widgets to do a particular thing. I think what would make the most sense for everybody, whether you've used Timekeeper or not, is this widget in the lower left, inbox, right? Everybody knows what an inbox is, right? That's where I get my mail messages, in my inbox. So this widget is configured to take the user right to the inbox in the application. So that's what I mean when I say it's a window into a piece of the application. So this inbox widget is taking the user directly to inbox for them to do functions in their inbox. On the lower right-hand corner, you'll see one called WTK Reports. Again, this widget is configured to take the user directly to the reports function of the application. So again, another window taking me right to reports. So keep that in mind. I know that term might sound different or unusual to some folks, a widget, but just think of a widget as a little configured window into a particular part of the application. Related items is over here to the far right, guys. The related items is where widgets go that cannot fit on the screen because I can only display so much on the screen. If I have access to other widgets inside that workspace, they will be over here in related items. I'm going to click this top arrow to expand it and see what's in there. You can single click on the widget in there to make it active from related items. I'm going to show you that in a second. And as a matter of fact, with that, I'm going to make the switch over to the virtual machine so we can see some of this real time. Okay, this screen probably looks familiar to many of you who have had the chance to log in to Timekeeper. This is the Workforce Central login screen. I'm going to go in as Christy Fryman, like you saw in the screenshot, although this Christy Fryman is going to look slightly different. So I've logged in as Christy Fryman. It's going to load her navigator for me in a second. Okay, so now we see we're logged in as Christy Fryman, right? Different look than you saw in the PowerPoint. This is a single widget display versus the 3-column we saw in the screenshot on the PowerPoint. But again, we're logged in as Christy Fryman. To sign out, we simply click the sign out button underneath her. I mentioned the Kronos logo in my example here can be changed to your company logo. A little refresh button to refresh the workspace, the navigator. The alerts. Okay, in this case, we see 3, right? I told you in the PowerPoint that we're showing 2 alerts. In this example, we have configured the maximum number of alerts, which is 3. So we have our 3 alerts configured. In here, if we don't know what these alerts are, right, maybe I'm brand new to the system and these symbols mean nothing to me. I do not know what this exclamation mark is, what this piece of paper with the checklist is, or the time clock with the exclamation point is. So if I don't know what they are, I can just simply take my mouse over it, and I'm experiencing a little delay. It'll tell me what kind of alert that is. So in this example here, on the first one that there was 14 of, I didn't know what kind of alert that was. So I put my mouse over it, and it told me it's the exceptions alert, and that there's 14. If I move to the one next to it, it's telling me this is the request manager alert, and there's no pending items. We knew that anyway because there's no number above it, like the 14 was above the exception. And I want to know what this N1 is, so I mouse over. It tells me it's my overtime, and there are 0 items in there too. If there was a number, it would show on the top. So in this example, we have requests, overtime, and exceptions that we want Christy Fryman to see. I'm going to go over to the exceptions because that's where we have 14 exceptions that need our attention. To view them, you can just click on the alert one time. It'll show you a list of the different exceptions, and again, there's 14 of them. I can use this scroll bar over here to scroll through each alert, or I can click this View All button. In this case, I'm going to click the View All button. The View All button is going to show me on the one screen all the alerts, all 14 of them, for all the employees. My apologies, I have a slight delay with my application today. There we go. So it shows me all my employees with all their exceptions. So I can see Christine St. Pierre has 2, Don Gormley has 3, and so on. So I see all my exceptions, all 14. If I want to start resolving them, I say, gosh, okay, Christine has 2. I can click on Christine, who has the 2 exceptions. It'll take me right into the time data exceptions widget, and I can resolve the exceptions. And this isn't loading right. Let me try to refresh it. Not loading my exceptions correctly, so I'm going to come back to that and show you guys resolving the exception through the alert. So just know for now that your number of alerts show, so 14, you can see them all on this list, and from here you could address your alerts. You can also go up to the alerts here, click on the person that has the alerts and go directly to the time card itself. Just checking my questions for a minute. All right. So back at the alerts, again, if I had anything in the other 2 categories, they would show a number on the top of the screen. I could click on those to view them as well. Now, we mentioned if you have more than one workspace, moving over to the right here is the workspace carousel. In this example, Christy Fryman's home workspace is the Manage My Department workspace. In the Manage My Department workspace, she has a bunch of widgets and items she can use. But I mentioned earlier that Christy has more than one workspace. The Manage My Department workspace is her home workspace, but she also has 2 other workspaces that she might need to use, and those are in the Workspace carousel. So if I click the down arrow like I showed you in the PowerPoint, when I click my down arrow, the Workspaces carousel will open, and I see she has a My Information workspace, and I can click the arrow to scroll through the Workspace carousel, and I see she has a Get Support workspace as well. So let's start off with saying she needs her My Information workspace. So when she's at the My Information workspace, she can click this workspace just one time. By clicking the workspace one time on the Workspace carousel, it will bring it to your navigator and open it up as the active workspace. I know it's the active workspace, right, because it's white, so I'm looking at the items here for this workspace. It's put it side by side with the Manage My Department workspace. If I want to toggle back, I can just click on the Manage My Department tab. You'll see it's turned white now, and I'm back in the Manage My Department workspace. Again, if I want to go back to the My Information, click it. You'll notice the My Information workspace has the little round circle around it, indicating that it came off the carousel. This is the carousel icon, so I know this workspace came from the carousel, where the Manage My Department workspace is the home workspace because it has the house on it. So those are my two different workspaces here. When I'm done using the workspace that came off the carousel, I could simply just click on the X. By clicking on the X, it'll put the workspace back up there in the workspace carousel, and it'll be there for me the next time I need it. Now I want to talk to you about what's on the screen for Manage My Department, and then I want to go back up to the workspace carousel to show you the difference of the workspaces. So Manage My Department opens to one active primary widget, the Reconcile Time Card widget. If there are other widgets that Christy has access to, I said they would be in related items, this light blue area here on the side of the screen. If I click the arrow here, it will expand my related items, and I'll see a list, in this case a long list of other widgets I have access to. Now pay close attention. I get this question a lot from new clients. They'll say, well, you know, would tell you go to the Reconcile Time Card widget, and they'll open related items and they see it's gray and they can't click on it, and they say, Chris, my Reconcile Time Card widget is grayed out, I cannot click on it. And I'll say, you're exactly right. The reason why it's grayed out and you cannot click on it is because it's already open. So in this case, right, Reconcile Time Card, it's out here already. It's already open, so I cannot select it on related items. But let's say I wanted the Actions widget. So in this case, I was Christy Fryman. I needed the Actions widget. I did not see it on the screen, so I knew it was in related items. So I expanded related items. I found the Actions widget. I'm going to click on it one time. By clicking on it one time, it'll bring it out to the active workspace, and active position in the workspace, and I can work on it. So here's Actions. Now I can do what I wanted in the Actions widget. When I was done, I can click this little arrow to close it right back into related items, and I can click the refresh to refresh the information. So those are those two tools up there, the refresh and the X. Before I close this, and by using the X and close it into related items, I want to talk about a couple other things that are up here. I want to talk about the Maximize button and the gear icon. So the Maximize button, by clicking it, makes the workspace bigger. Some of these widgets, not everything displays in the area that it opens in. So if you click the Maximize button, it'll make it bigger. Once you maximize it and make it bigger, it turns it into a Restore Down button. Looks kind of like a broken box. If I click on that again, it'll restore it back down to the size it originally was. Next to the Maximize button is what we call the gear icon. The gear icon has options for popping out and closing a widget along with preferences. So you can use that tool instead of using the X I mentioned up here in the Actions. If I want to close it, I can simply click the X and it'll put it back in related items. If you want to collapse related items back, you can simply click the arrow to collapse it, give you a little more real estate on the screen. One thing I want to show you is the dragging feature to put two widgets side by side. If you have a need to look at two widgets on the screen at the same time and you're only configured for a single widget, like this example is, say I was doing the Reconcile Time Card widget, and I see that Julie Adams here has an unexcused absence, right? She has a check mark in the unexcused absence, so I know Julie had an absence. But I was thinking to myself, gosh, I think I might have got an email from Julie letting me know she wasn't going to be here because she had jury duty. Let me check my inbox to see if that's the case. I can come over here to Related Items, click and hold that widget and drag it out on the screen and drop it. By clicking, holding, and dragging and dropping it out, it'll put the two widgets side by side. So now I can look and see, oh, did I have any messages in my inbox from Julie about being out. And you know, that's just an example. There might be several reasons why you want to look at two widgets side by side like this, but my main purpose in this example is to show you that it can be done. So you can look at these widgets side by side. It's not a permanent change. When you drag and drop like this, it is just temporary. It'll only last until you leave that workspace, and when you come back, it'll be back to the default configuration. So this isn't a permanent change, it's a temporary change. Again, maximize button is still there. Again, the gear icon is there. I'm going to use the gear icon this time to close it back into related items. And it goes back to the widget that was originally there. I'm going to show you a couple other quick features. If you use it, these are both optional. The fields I'm going to talk about now are both optional fields. One is the go-to control, which is right here where my mouse is. If I mouse over it, it tells me it's the go-to control. And the other is the synchronize button at the top where my mouse is. Again, by mousing over, I see it gives me the little help window that tells me it's the synchronize button. Both are optional, but I'm going to show you how to use them. So from anywhere in the timekeeping application, if you have the go-to button, you can highlight a particular employee. In this case, I have highlighted Julie Adams. When you highlight that employee, note that the go-to control has now turned orange, an orangey color. That tells you that you can use it now, that there's actually features in it. Click the drop-down arrow, and it'll say, what do you want to do, Chris, for Julie Adams? Do I want to go to her time data exceptions, manage requests, reports, schedule editor, or time card? I'm going to say time card. So I'm going to click on that time card, and it will take me to Julie Adams' time card. Just as a side note, and this is kind of getting off topic of navigating the navigator, but in the time card, once you get there, if you ever forget, it always color codes things. I'm mousing over the red box around the date, which tells me this is an absence, so I know this employee was absent on that day. If the date's in red, if the date's in green, those all signify different different types of exceptions, which you'll learn about as you learn about Workforce Timekeeper. But that's the go-to control. Some companies use it, some don't, so you may not have it. I'm going to click the refresh button on the employee time card widget to go back to the original setting. Oh my gosh. Bear with me. Okay, so now that I'm back in the reconciled time card, I said there's also something up here called the synchronize button. So I'm going to talk about it next. But before I move on, I just want to mention, you might say, well, Chris, you said some companies don't have the go-to control. If I don't have the go-to control, how could I go to Julie Adams' time card? Well, going to a time card in the timekeeping application is as simple as double-clicking on any of these employees. So in that example, you know, I clicked on Julie Adams once and used the go-to control. I could have just come over and double-clicked on Julie Adams. Took me to the same place, right? Go to the time card the same way. By double-clicking on an employee, it'll go right to the time card. So if you don't have that go-to control, that's another way that you can do that. So how about the synchronize button up at the top? So up at the top of the screen here, you'll always have a time period in a show as you go into each area of Timekeeper. Timekeeper is always asking you, who do you want to see for what time period? So in this example up here, we have an extra show and time period with a synchronize button. This is an option, and what this does is this is setting the who do you want to see and for what time period for everything in the workspace. So if I'm Christy Fryman and I'm going to be using a bunch of different widgets today of all different varieties, and I want to always see current pay period and all home, I select current pay period in the time period. I select all home in the show. If I now hit this synchronize button one time, it has now synchronized everything in this workspace to be showing all home employees for the current period. You can see it below in this widget, the reconciled time card, see how it shows all home, current pay period. Any of these widgets now that I access are showing current pay period, all home. So that synchronize option just forces that same date, range, and who do you want to see to the whole workspace. Again, it's optional. Some customers use it, some don't. If you don't have it, you always have the option inside every widget to pick who do you want to see and for what time period. So if I didn't have that option, if I didn't have the synchronized option, I could come into the actual widget as they open and say I want to see all home for current pay period. So it's not something that has to be there, but it's something that can be put there, and that is the purpose of it, to force the same date range and the same people to everything you're using in the workspace. You guys notice, to show you that, I expanded using the maximize button. I'm going to now click the restore button to restore it back down. And now we're back to the original size. I'm going to go back up to the alerts. So I'm going to go back to Christine St. Pierre. Oops. First, I want to show you one more thing. Take note here in the Manage My Time card, the alerts that I'm seeing here, you know, I see the alerts, the Workspace carousel. I see one other item on the top. I actually see two. I see the refresh button to refresh the alerts. So clicking on this would refresh the alerts. Maybe when I logged in I had 14. I'm going to click the refresh button. This is just a sample training database, so it'll still be at 14, but if this was a live production system and I click the refresh button, maybe it would say 16 now or 17 now if an additional alert had come in since I've been working. I want to show you over here, this is the search feature. This is an optional feature as well. The search icon is. You can click the employee search. That's what this magnifying glass is, employee search. When I click employee search, it allows me to search for an employee. It's optional up here. If you don't have the search feature like that up at the top to search, you probably have something called a quick find widget like this that I just clicked on. And the quick find widget does the same thing. It allows you to look for employees. An asterisk is a wild card. You can pull up everybody, or you can type a name, part of a last name, part of a first name, click that find button. I left the asterisk to pull up everybody, and you can find all employees. So if you don't have this employee search up here, you have the quick find widget. So again, that's optional. But what I wanted to point out to you guys is in this home workspace, in this Manage My Department workspace, the widget that you're seeing here and all these related items are specific to this workspace. If I come up to the top here and pick another workspace like I did before, if I pick My Information, when My Information opens, it opens up, right? I know it's the active workspace because it's white. Remember, I can toggle back and forth, has a little refresh button, and I can close it. But when I open related items, I want you to notice, see how there's different items in related items? There's less, right? There's not as many items in there, and they're different. It's because this related items goes with this workspace. Just like when I was in Manage My Department, what I saw here in the active position and in related items were specific to that workspace. So I just don't want related items because you know you had WTK reports in there, and now you're in My Information and you're saying, Chris, where is WTK reports? I don't see it in here. Well, it wasn't in this workspace, remember? Let's close this up. It was in related items in this workspace down near the bottom. So just keep in mind that there's two different, the related items changes because it's the widgets related to this particular workspace. Oops. Just going to read a question. I'm just reading through a few of the questions, guys, before I get too far along on here. Can you, first question is, can you explain what is best to set up in the Workspace carousel versus widgets within the Workspace tab? That's a great question right there. I'm going to repeat that for everybody. Somebody asked me, Chris, what should go in the carousel versus what widget should go in the Workspace? And I always talk about this, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it now, just conceptually how things are configured in Navigator, right? So Navigator starts with all these individual, it's a building block approach. So it starts with building all these widgets. So you as a company say, you know what, no matter what the user, no matter what the person, we're going to need these 100 different widgets, right? We're going to want an inbox widget, a reports widget, a reconcile time card widget, whatever the case may be. You build all those widgets. Once you build a bunch of widgets or wizards, which we're going to talk about in a minute, once you build those, you assign those to a workspace. So I then determine, okay, my timekeeping managers, in my example, Christy Fryman, I am going to have Christy Fryman have a manage my department workspace. And within that workspace, I'm going to give her all the widgets she needs to manage her department. So all those widgets get assigned to that particular workspace. Then I say to myself, well, what else does Christy need to do functionally? Well, she needs her information, right? So I'm going to give her a My Information workspace, and I'm going to put in there all the widgets that have to do with managing her information. So this process repeats. So I take the widgets, I put them into a workspace, then I create all the different workspaces that may need to be used, and then in the end, I create a Navigator profile where I'm saying, okay, for my timekeeping manager Navigator profile, they need these 3 workspaces: get support, manage my department, and my information. Then I put those 3 workspaces into that Navigator. Now, I know it seems like I took a long way around in answering this question of what should be in the workspace versus what should be in the carousel, but hopefully now that I've gone through that, you guys have already figured it out. Stuff is grouped by that particular function of the workspace. So to answer what widgets make sense to be in the workspace versus in the carousel, remember the carousel is for totally separate workspaces. So the only thing that's going to be in that workspace carousel is a new and different workspace, and that workspace probably does something totally different. So in this case, Christy has the Manage My Department where it has all the widgets relating to her managing her folks. Up in the workspace carousel is totally different workspaces that have widgets related to whatever that function is. In the example, her My Information, where it has all the widgets she needs to do her own stuff, her own inbox, her own requests. So to answer your question, the widgets should be grouped by what they're being used for. The ones that belong to the workspace will be in related items in that tab. The ones that relate to a different workspace will be up in the workspace carousel. So I hope I answered your question. That was a great question. Another question, is the synchronized option only available in 7.0? We are still on 6.3. So that's a good question. I believe that is a 7.0 new feature, but we'll have to get back to you on that. I'm going to put that in the parking lot because I don't want to say with 100% certainty, but I do believe that is a 7.0 feature that you will not see in 6.3. On any of the alerts, I got a question specific to the overtime alert, whether it is searching on the pay code. The alerts, depending on what type of, the alerts can be configured on a lot of different things, like I mentioned earlier. Overtime requests overtime, that's been reached, exceptions, requests for time off. You can point those towards any of those things as long as you don't have more than 3, because 3 is the maximum amount of alerts. And they'll come from the actual exception. So alerts are only, and this is why I say this, alerts are only for hourly time card employees, right? Because the exception has to be there. They have to have a schedule, and the alert is driven on the particular exception or the request. So you can point those alerts to really within parameters. I mean, you can't create something that's totally off the wall, but there's a lot of different things that can be required, that can be that can be configured as alerts. Getting a few more questions. What is an exception, not a pay code? Oh, okay, right, yeah. Somebody's asking on overtime, is it a pay code or an exception? Right, that's a pay code, so that's driven off a pay code, where your exceptions alerts, like a laid in, laid out, that's driven from an exception in the time card. Okay, so going back to the Navigator, I want to show you one more thing because we're getting down to our last few minutes. I want to go to the Workspaces carousel, and I want to pull off, we didn't look at the Get Support workspace. This is a great workspace. I want to show you how you can link to Knowledge Pass from here. So I'm going to go up to the Workspace carousel. I'm going to click the down arrow. I'm going to toggle from my information over to the Get Support workspace. I'm going to click it one time to make it the active workspace. I'm going to wait for that to open. And this is opening 2 widgets side by side. So this is a 2-widget view. And Get Support typically looks like this. If you are linked up to Knowledge Pass, your Get Support has 2 sides. The right side is help. That is the traditional system help that you've always had. So if you've worked with a previous version of Workforce Timekeeper, you know that there's system help in there where you can search for different topics. That is still there. That's what you're seeing here on the right-hand side where it says help. That's system help. And system help is great, right? You know, if you're curious of something, you can look it up in system help, get that little, you know, 1 or 2 sentence clarification on it, maybe help you figure something out. A new feature here in Get Support is being able to link directly to Knowledge Pass with that same sign-on. So you don't have to log into Knowledge Pass separately. You can connect right to Knowledge Pass from here to search for learning on a particular topic that you're looking for information on. Why is that cool? Well, you know, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times when I'm in an application and I'm unsure about something and I'm having to hit the system help, you know, it might get me by, but a lot of times I need more information than the system help is giving me. So if I'm looking up something on maybe, you know, delegating authority, I'm going to go on vacation, and I'm going to delegate my timekeeping authority to another manager using the manager delegation. I can look it up in system help. It might give me a little information about it, but I think, gosh, I really don't know much about this. I need more information. I can go to the Knowledge Pass side, and it will pull up topics it'll pull up that topic in Knowledge Pass to point me to where other performance support or learning items is. So to me, I mean, that's huge, right? So if you need more information than System Help is giving you, you'll be able to get it right from Knowledge Pass. Now, you guys are going to ask, why does your Knowledge Pass side on the left look like this? It's because this is just a training database. I am not connected to Knowledge Pass here, so you're just seeing the widget configured. We configured a Knowledge Pass widget so we could show you guys what it looks like, but I'm not connected to Knowledge Pass. If I was, Knowledge Pass would be open on the left-hand side of the screen. For those of you guys who haven't had a chance to really look at Knowledge Pass, the thing that's so great about Knowledge Pass is when people think about, you know, learning, they think, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to sign up and register for a class and sit through a class. Knowledge Pass is full of great materials that aren't just classes. Yes, there are classes on Knowledge Pass, but there's also a ton of great job aids. There's some fantastic job aids on Knowledge Pass that you can use that'll step you through common processes. There's some great little 3-minute how-to movies that teach you something. It's kind of the equivalent of what I consider like a YouTube video. You know, maybe I need to change the headlight in my Chevy pickup truck. I'm not sure how to do that. I hit YouTube. I watch a little couple-minute video on YouTube on how to do it, and I go out there and I switch my headlight. That's the concept behind these 3-minute how-tos on Knowledge Pass. They're not a video of a person, but they're a movie of somebody doing something in the application. So if I wasn't sure on how to approve a time card, I could watch a 3-minute how-to on approving time cards, and it would show me in that quick couple of minutes, it'll show me somebody approving a time card in the system. So I can watch it and say, okay, great, now I know how to do that. So there's 3-minute how-tos, there's different self-paced, web-based courses, there's the free Learning Live sessions, obviously, like you guys are in today. Tons and tons and tons of great information on Knowledge Pass. And this is a new feature, being able to link Knowledge Pass right in here, so I don't have to go out to Knowledge Pass and launch it and log in. I can go right from here and search for information on my topic in Knowledge Pass if you're configured to be hooked up to Knowledge Pass. So again, system help on the right, Knowledge Pass on the left. Refresh to refresh this workspace, and the X again to close that workspace, put it right back up in the carousel. Want to take just a quick minute to review a lot of some of these key things we've talked about today, then I'll get to some questions with the last couple minutes we have. Again, we're logged into the Navigator. This whole thing is your Navigator. So this is Chris Fryman. What we've decided is the Workforce Timekeeping Manager. Navigator. So everything on the screen is part of the Navigator. Inside the Navigator, the Navigator opens to a workspace. In this case, Manage My Department. It's the home workspace. We know by the house. We can refresh it here. Everything in this workspace is in this area down here. We have one active widget showing in the primary position. It's the Reconcile Time Card widget. The other ones were over here in related items. We could hit the arrow to collapse it or expand it. That is also configurable. It can be configured to open, expand it, or configured to open, close, but the arrow opens it and closes it for you to use. When you find the widget you want, simply click on it one time. That will bring it out to the usable space. Remember, you have the maximize button to make it bigger. Once it's bigger, it turns to the restore down button where it'll make it smaller. The gear icon next to it that you can use to pop out the widget or close it instead of dragging it or using the arrows like I've been using. When you're done, you can click the X to put it right back in related items. Again, across the top of the screen, we have the employee search where we can click on it once and it'll launch the search for an employee. Remember, that is optional. If you don't have that, you will have some version probably of the quick find widget to search for employees. Workspace carousel. Remember, Chrissy has 3 workspaces. Manage My Department's home. The other ones are up here in the workspace carousel. I use that by clicking the down arrow. If I had 1, 2, or 20 different workspaces, I can use the arrows to toggle through them. When I find the one I want, click it one time, it'll bring it up, make it active. I know it's active because it's white. I know it came off the carousel because of the carousel icon. I can refresh it. When I'm done, I can click the X. The two optional features we talked about, the synchronize button, where you can click to synchronize the time period and the people that you're looking at through all the different widgets that's in the workspace. And the go to button, that's optional. By clicking on the employee one time, it turns orange. You can click on some different options. I want to talk to you guys about a widget really quick because I almost forgot about widget. Let me find a widget on here that I can show you. A wizard, excuse me. I want to show you a wizard. A wizard is a widget that steps you through a process. So we said a widget was a little window into a part of the application. A wizard has steps. So typically a company might configure a wizard for like a pay period close, time card sign off type of thing where you want a manager to do one thing, then the next thing. Walk them through it. You know it's a wizard because it has little chevrons running across the top of the screen. I'm going to find an example of one to see. I always forget which one in here because you don't know they're a wizard by just looking at them. You just have to open them up and see. Yeah, that's a widget. Let me find a wizard. One second. The time card approval should be a wizard, I would hope. Yep. And so we're looking at a wizard for the first time. So this opens just like a widget, has the same X and refresh, X to close it up, refresh it. We can still make it bigger, restore it down. We can still use the gear icon, but this is a wizard, right? It's stepping me through something. So I've designed this wizard so I can tell my managers, in this case Christy Fryman, to step through a process for signing off on time cards. So I want her first to start with any punch issues, right? I'm looking through here, wanting her to look, hey, do I have any punch issues? If I do, in this case she does, and she would have to resolve these before approving the time card. She's got a bunch of unexcused absences. I can highlight them and click on the details button to see the details. But in this case, I just want to show you the concept of a wizard. So first, she has to look at her issues. Assuming she has resolved all of her issues, she'll go to the next step. She can do that by clicking the next button or just simply clicking on the chevron itself. That'll bring her to the next step, the approval step, where she can, decide that she's going to, go up here and approve her time cards. So I can approve my time cards. Once my time cards are approved, I can again hit the next or simply click on the next step in the chevron, which is the group edit results, where I can see that I successfully approved 80 time cards. Your company might require you to individually approve time cards. In this example, I just did a select all just so you can see the steps. If I need to go back to a previous step, I can click on the chevron itself, or again, I can use the previous and next buttons to go from chevron to chevron. If I want to go all the way back to the beginning, I can click the double arrow. Like I said, you guys probably have some kind of version of this wizard. I don't know what version that may be. You probably have some type of time card approval one. I just want you to leave today with the concept that a wizard is a widget that steps you through a process. So by clicking on each chevron, you're taking the manager through do this, then do this, then do this. And you can click on the chevron to advance or use the next or previous buttons. So with that, we're down to our last 2 minutes. I'm going to click on the questions, see what we've got. Yes, hold on a couple of the questions. We've got quite a few. I'm going to try to get to all these very, very quickly. Will this recorded webinar be available later? Yes, Michelle is recording this webinar, so you can listen to this webinar at a later date. And also, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint? Yes, you can. After this webinar, you'll be receiving an email, and the PowerPoint will be in the email, so you'll get a copy of the PowerPoint as well. No, you can't. This is a long question, but a good one. We are currently on Classic View and want to migrate to Navigator. can we do it gradually while still on Classic? Oh, okay. I misunderstood your question. I think what you're asking is, can some users be on Classic where some be on Navigator? That I'm not sure of. You'll have to ask your implementation consultant on that. I do know that one user, you can't have both views at one time. That's what I thought you were originally asking. One user cannot have Classic and Navigator showing on the screen at the same time. I am not sure. I've never been asked that question. If you can take, say you have 100 employees, I don't know if you can take 50 of them and put them on Navigator and 50 of them on Classic. I'm not sure if that's an option or not. If you, like I said, if you go to your consultant, your Kronos consultant that's doing your configuration, they should be able to tell you that, because I am not sure on that or not. I just know that one person cannot have both views on the screen. Oh, I had somebody say in the questions that they are currently using both Classic and Navigator. So whoever asked the questions about that, then I guess you can have some users set up on Classic and some on Navigator. So again, I recommend you contact your Kronos consultant who's doing your configuration to figure out how to do that.